Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed, specifically the Hungry. Because I know there's a lot of people who watch this channel who are really into their vampires. You know, I've gained that impression over the past few years. But it's a video I posted recently. I asked the question, what Curseborne videos would you like to see? And there was a very highly rated comment requesting a breakdown of the Hungry mechanics. So the Hungry are our vampires in Curseborne, and they're one of my favourite lineages to play. Every single lineage has their own small parcel of mechanics. As a player, you don't need to memorize all of these things. Essentially, you're just going to have what you need on your character sheet. But for the Hungry, their mechanics specifically derive around what kind of predators they are and what kind of feeding they need to do. Therefore, starting with the Bloodthirst. Now, Bloodthirst is something that is, of course, archetypally vampiric. The Hungry, every session, need to feed on blood. Doesn't matter what kind of vampire they are, they need to feed on blood. This is something that can be resolved mechanically or narratively. What do I mean by that? Well, there's not going to be every single session where you want to play through a feeding scene or a hunting scene. It shouldn't be mandatory. It gets dull quickly if you do. However, if you go for the narrative resolution, the story guide and player should speak to each other and talk about any complications that might emerge from it, and then settle those complications, if they can be settled, with a simple dice roll to see whether anything comes off. This is the kind of thing like being caught on CCTV, having a witness see your feeding, the blood running out afterwards because you're feeding from your fridge, that sort of thing. But you can do it narratively, simple dice roll, boom, done. The mechanical way is whether you wish to take it from someone by force or whether you want to manipulate it out of them. The Bloodthirst can be sated, therefore, with a close combat plus might roll or a persuasion plus manipulation roll against the target's defense or integrity, respectively. You're going against their defense if you're trying to physically take it, integrity if you're trying to manipulate it out of them. However, there is an addition to that difficulty that is dependent on your entanglement. Entanglement is how powerful you are as an accursed. Your entanglement is halved, rounded up, and added to the difficulty. So if someone has a defense of 1 and your entanglement 1, the defense is 2. Why? Why is the difficulty 2 in that case? And why would it be higher if your character is more powerful? It's because as you get more powerful, you need to feed more. Therefore, you need to feed more in order to purchase the drink blood trick that enables you to sate your hunger and give your victim the drained status effect. Simple as that. That's the Bloodthirst. That is an average part of playing a vampire, a Hungry in Curseborne. Now, if you want to really mechanize it or turn it into a statistic, a Hungry consumes around a litre of the mortal's blood before they are satisfied, as a general rule. If they fail to feed during the scene, they sacrifice curse dice equal to their entanglement rating, which of course may send them into a damnation state. Damnation is where your damned hunger comes in. That's right, Hungry have Bloodthirst and Damned Hunger. And the Damned Hunger is defined in large part by which major path you choose at character creation. So, brief tangent. Every character in Curseborne and Storypath Ultra games in general have 3 paths. In some games, any one of those paths could be your major path. In Curseborne, it's one of 2. Specifically, your lineage or your family. If it's your lineage, your damned hunger for being hungry is you need to consume an excessive quantity of blood in order to satisfy yourself. So you would still go through the same mechanic as for the Bloodthirst, but it will definitely leave your victim with the aggravated wound effect. It's a status effect that will probably prevent the average mortal from getting up and running away afterwards. Or, indeed, if you feed to excess beyond that, a mortally wounded status effect, which probably means that mortal is going to die, hence mortally wounded. That's if lineage, Hungry, is your major path. That is the archetypal vampire. You are just a blood drinker. You can be a vampire of the Gaki, a vampire of the Airs, a vampire of the Bathorites, but if your major path is Hungry, that is your damned hunger. More and more blood, more than anyone should require. Now, if your major path is your family, your damned hunger is slightly different. You see, if your damned hunger is, let's say, hearts, because your family is the heirs, you need to extract the heart from a victim. That victim either needs to already be suffering the taken out status effect, mortally wounded status effect, or already be dead. You can eat the hearts of the dead, freshly dead, I would suggest. Or they need to be grappled, and you need to be able to excise it with a medicine plus close combat roll for plus close combat. Sorry, medicine plus might roll, for example, which would go against their defense if they were fighting against you. Medicine plus dexterity would probably be fine if they were restrained and you just wanted to make a nice incision. That victim, if they're not already suffering the mortally wounded status effect, will be after you remove their heart, because they don't have much long left. I mean, that's kind of the risk of taking someone's heart. It gets a little more interesting, I guess, and varied when you start looking at some of the families that do things like drink memories or drink souls. As an example, the ascetics crave human memories, and so to feed their damned hunger, they need to roll enigmas plus cunning or science plus manipulation. And if they succeed in their one hit to purchase the steal memories trick, if the target is involved in an investigation, the ascetic gains a piece of evidence that the victim would know about them or the investigated event. So not only do you feed and you sate your damned hunger, resolving your damnation, you also gain a piece of evidence from the memory you've stolen. If you're a black heart and you crave human emotion, you would make a persuasion plus manipulation roll and gain access to the following trick if you beat the difficulty. For one hit, the black heart consumes an emotion from his victims and gains the inspired status effect as an emotional rush, which applies to their next action. Going through all of this, every single feeding type for the damned hunger is not only going to afflict your victim in some way, it's going to give you a benefit. The reason that exists mechanically and stylistically is because there should be a reward involved for you playing your hungry as an eater of hearts, an eater of souls or memories or whatever. The heirs, for example, if they eat a heart, will gain one of the Undead Strength benefits, which we'll get onto in a moment. So every single major path works in that way. So depending on which major path you go for, you're going to have a different damned hunger, and that will come up when you run out of curse dice. You can satisfy your bloodthirst with your damned hunger. If you don't want to drink blood, if you just want to drink ghosts, for example, well, congratulations, as a Gaki, you can do that. You just need to make sure there's always ghosts around you. You need to be able to perceive them in order to access them. That mechanical breakdown exists within the book of Curseborne. We have basically given you the choice. You can play it mechanically or you can play it narratively. But if you want to play it mechanically, here are the mechanics. I know there were some people who were worried about that it was too loose. Well, now it isn't. So you have the guidance you need, I would hope. So you're a hungry. That also means you're a nocturnal predator. What that means is you gain +1 enhancement. An enhancement is an automatic hit as long as you roll as long as you beat the difficulty on your average roll. So you roll your dice pool, beat the difficulty, congratulations, you gain an enhancement that's +1. To all influence actions between sundown and sunrise, you are a nocturnal predator. But it also means that you struggle during daylight hours. You suffer the exposure status effect during daytime, which will add complications to your actions. And if you're exposed to sunlight, well, congratulations, you will suffer 1 injury each time your complication is not bought off. And that will continue to be the case for as long as you are exposed to sunlight. Therefore, while hungry can operate in sunlight while undercover, big hats, sunglasses, hoodies, that kind of thing, they will find it slightly harder. Not much, but slightly harder. Now, let's get on to Undead Strength, because I think that's a part of the hungry experience a lot of people are really looking forward to. Hungry are immune to mortal diseases, they are ageless, they can regenerate injuries to their bodies, but their strength comes at a cost. At any time, a hungry can bleed a curse die and choose 1 benefit from the Undead Strength list. And I have every confidence this is going to expand as Curseborne, the RPG, goes on. Not only do they gain a benefit, they also gain a bane. If you have played a video game where you can basically take perks and nerfs or malices, things that act as negatives, I guess from a World of Darkness perspective, merits and flaws, that's how Undead Strength works. For every Bane, you can take a benefit, but each time you do it, you've got to bleed an additional curse die. So, most characters start the game with one curse die. You gain curse dice as the game goes on. You can use them to do things like buy spells or activate your Undead Strength, that kind of thing. Undead Strength can give you +1 enhancement that stacks to physical attribute actions, +1 enhancement to mental, +1 to social attributes. Each time you buy it, you can basically buy an additional one. You can regenerate 1 injury at the beginning of each round if you buy one of these. But, as I say, you suffer a Bane, and you are mortally repelled by these Banes. If you're within short range of the Bane, you suffer a moderate complication in your actions, and if you fail to buy it off on that action, you suffer an injury and an appropriate status effect, such as being unable to regain curse dice, or you're terrified, or stunned, or something like that. The story guide will determine which status effect is appropriate. There are plenty available. So those Banes might be things like Bright Light. That will inflict the Terrified status effect. These are suggested in the book. Fire, the Agony status effect. Running Water, the Slowed status effect. Rain, Agony status effect again. Holy Water, the Bleeding status effect. We could go on. In fact, I will. They are divided into 4 sections. You've got elements that have things like I've just talked about. Faith, holy symbols, objects, artifacts, prayers, religious iconography. Folklore, things like paper money, white animals, spilled grains of salt, complex origami, and distance. Increase an existing Bane range by 1 step. So it's no longer a short range Bane, it's now a medium range, or long range if you want to keep doing it. So, that is how the Banes work. We're almost done. Last thing is talking about the Hungry. Well, Hungry get inheritances and they get torments. Every single lineage in Curseborne gains a torment, and every single lineage in the core book has got 3 options for torments. I'll read a couple of them for you from the Hungry. Torments come into effect whenever you choose, basically. You choose to succumb to a torment, that gives you 1 curse die or 1 momentum. If it disadvantages the entire crew, you could probably gain both. So, for example, Boundless Hunger. That's a torment. Most Hungry eventually find satisfaction. Someone with Boundless Hunger never does. When hitting 0 curse dice, they must sate her major part's hunger and her bloodthirst, as an example. Take What's Mine is another one. The Hungry rule by birthright, their eternal nobility. A character with this torment recognizes that everything belongs to her. When she succumbs, there's no item, gold, service that she believes she cannot have. She demands the attention and service of others around her and must act on that to resolve this torment. And so on. Now, I'll get into inheritances briefly, though I will note that there is a different inheritance for every single family, so this video would go on a long time if I broke it down family by family. For the time being, let's talk about a few of them. If you take your major path as Hungry, so your lineage, you gain this major path inheritance. I'll read it verbatim. The Hungry are immortal, so long as they feed their cravings. Anytime you partake in a meal to regain curse dice, you heal 1 injury for each curse die you gain. Additionally, once per session at the start of a round in which the Hungry is at near death, she automatically regains 1 full injury level if mortals are present in the scene. She drains their health. All mortals up to medium range receive the drained status effect. It's very difficult to kill a Hungry that has the Hungry path major, and the inheritance for that path, I should say. If there are no mortals in the scene, they can choose to take it from other accursed with an esoteric action. So, let's look at some of the families. We'll go for the inheritance for the ascetics, for example. Their major path inheritance. Once you've learned something, you don't forget it. Once per session, describe a story element in a scene as if you had spent 1 momentum. You can use momentum to do this. Once per session, when you activate your Undead Strength, you may gain +1 intellect advantage for 1 Bane. So that is a bonus that other Hungry don't have access to. The Black Hearts, meanwhile, their major path inheritance, your need for emotion draws you to others. You value your relationship with humans and revile other Hungry. When you make a positive bond with a mortal, it always starts at a rating of 2 instead of 1. When you make a negative bond with other Hungry, however, it always starts at 2. Black Hearts can have an infinite number of level 2 bonds, which makes them excellent social characters. The Gaki, their major path inheritance, gives them power over ghosts. Once per session, in an area a death has occurred or bodies are kept, you can summon a phantasm with the Fright template. That is one of the lower templates of monstrosities in Curseborne. It has motives, as all phantasms do. The story guide defines them, will speak with you, follow your command for the rest of the scene before going on to haunt the area. The phantasm can't be compelled to hurt itself, without a spell anyway, and will be oblivious towards your attempt to feed from it until you do so. As soon as it's harmed, it becomes hostile. You gain that benefit for having Gaki as your major path. So every single family has a major path inheritance, depending on which major path you choose. Hungry, Ascetic, Blackheart, Gaki, Air, Batherite, and so on. So that is the Hungry, covering the Bloodthirst, the Damned Hunger, Nocturnal Predator, Undead Strength, Torments, and Inheritances. It isn't utterly complete. I'm not going to go through absolutely everything. That's all in the manuscript, which you'll be able to get. You can pick up Curseborne right now on BackerKit, and if you do so, you gain access to the preview manuscript. There is a revised one, and I'm slowly but surely teasing bits of it out on the Onyx Path Discord, so join that Discord if you haven't already. And yeah, I hope this has helped sate some curiosities and some damned hungers. Thank you very much for watching.